My name is Gerald Gloade. I'm from the Millbrook First Nation, and I'm the Program Development Officer for the Mi'kmawey Debert Cultural Centre. I started off in a career as a graphic designer for 25 years with Lands and Forests and Department of Natural Resources. And from there I got into communications and education, and they got me out there front row center doing delivery of some of these programs. And of course, whenever you talk about the environment, talk about wildlife, that Mi'kmaq part of you comes out. And I've been working the last 19 years with Tim and for Tim and the Mi'kmawey Debert project. I still work for the province of Nova Scotia under the Department of Education and the Mi'kmaq Liaison Office. Mi'kmawey Debert is going to be a cultural centre that's built on an archaeology site. And this archaeology site is like one of the oldest archaeological sites in eastern Canada. And it talks about the birth of our nation. It talks about when people first moved and migrated into this area from the south. And it's like going back some 13,300 years, that's the point of the Wisconsin glaciation. And literally as the ice warmed up along the east coast, it's like temperature change allowed for vegetation. Animals are moving into the area and people are following and migrating their herds of animals. And when you look at our story and you look at all the tools and artifacts that our ancestors left behind, and even right now, it's only the stones, like that wood and the sinew and the bark off of the trees that they use, and the hides, that's all gone. It's all been returned to the earth. The only thing is the stones. As I say, the Mi'kmawey Debert is going to be more than just a cultural center. Education center, it's going to be a portal basically to Mi'kmaq culture. Everywhere is in Mi'kmawey. It's not just about this one little location. It's how we are connected as a nation. Well, when Dr. Don Julian was looking at the archaeological site and figured that'd be a great place to create Mi'kmawey Debert, he thought the first thing I'm going to need is I'm going to need an advisory council. And he looked to the educators from all the different communities, and it was a lot of them were the elders of the communities. More than just the 13 nations that we have here, we're looking towards even Quebec and the Gaspé Peninsula, northern New Brunswick. It's like we've had input from all parts of Mi'kmawey. And like even Chief Mizell Joe from Newfoundland, he's still part of organizations and groups that come here on a semi-annual basis to share knowledge and to put this in the flow of culture and put it in the flow of education. It's like, so our Elders Advisory, you take a look at them, they all sit there on the boardroom table once a month. A couple times a year, we have a couple day events where we take them to special places and get their input on things. We travel with them on best practices trips that are connected to tourism, and we have things like an object gallery. We show them an object that is hundreds of years old that depicts a way of life that we no longer celebrate. And then when you show them these artifacts, it draws up their memories, and they're like, well, these are the words that are associated with that object. And in a verb-based language, when you talk about an object, it tells you about what you're doing with it and how you use it. And there's just so much education. It takes it to a whole new level. That language, for one, is just one. But even the traditional connections. Once you tell a story, there's 13 others that jump in with either their interpretation, or it might sort of trigger something that sends them off into the past. I just love those meetings and those gatherings. It's like sending 13 Mi'kmaq in a time machine, and everybody goes off in a different direction to their teaching. So much of our culture is embedded in the language. Like I said, it's a verb base. When even Ernest Johnson from Eskasoni, he does a lot of education programs that we're going to be teaching the kids. And even when you show them something like something as simple as a caribou, and it's like, well, caribou is an anglicized word. It is our word. A lot of people don't know that. And like, the original word is kalibu. And kalibu in the Mi'kmaq language means to shovel. And you look at this animal and these little antlers, it's like, well, he uses those antlers to shovel the snow to get to the grasses underneath. He uses those antlers to shovel the rocks and the trees from all of their moss in order to feed. So that takes that understanding. It's a very visual language because it evokes imagery. When you say a word like mooing, a lot of people say, well, mooing means bear. It's like, but how did bear get his name? It's like mooing got his name from a basket we have. It's called a muinanik. And a muinanik is a harvester's basket or a berry picker's basket. We call bear and mooing because that's the one that picks berries. So there's these connections that can be made by like native speaking people, non-speaking natives, and even like non-native people themselves. It's like that whole education of how things are done in Mi'kmawey and why they're done. It's like there's a reason for these things. We tell stories for everything. And as storytellers, without a written word, there's many, many versions of the exact same story. And people say, well, how many versions are there? And I'm like, well, how many storytellers were there? And you're talking to an elder that's talking about educating children by telling them stories at nighttime. And as Dr. Merdina Marshall, Dr. Albert Marshall's wife, and I said, well, how long is a typical Mi'kmaq story? She just sort of looks at me and goes, how long does it take a child to fall asleep? My wife is a collector and she collects history books. And I pulled out all the different books that she had gathered on the history of Nova Scotia. Some of these books are darn close to 150 years old. And when you see the interpretation of what they were saying about the Mi'kmaq people, it made me laugh. It's like, that is so far wrong. Saying that we had no spirituality and that we had no knowledge of the Lord, Jesus Christ. It's like, well, we had knowledge of spirituality. And it went beyond Christianity and centralization, and it went beyond the European contact. It's like, ours goes back millennia. It's like, and you see in these writings that they were writing in, they're not from us. They're about us, but it's not our words at all. The new slogan that we have when it comes with education is nothing about us without us. And that there's the main thing. It's like, yeah, it's like when you want to know something, you ask the people involved in that. Correcting the myths of the past and the things that have been said about us that are not true at all. Correcting them and bringing out that true information is preservation of our culture. This stuff has been told for thousands of years from generation to generation to today. And we're the knowledge holders that are responsible for passing that on to the next generation, so it continues. And that to me is a big part of cultural tourism, because Mi'kmaq just weren't in these buildings and facilities that we create to house this. It's like they're everywhere throughout the land. It's like they're connected to the weather outside, the days of the week, the months of the year. It's like the stars in the sky. It's like everything is a teaching and everything is connected. If I gave you like a pocket watch and I took the back off of it, you'd see there's nothing more than a series of gears in the form of circles. And to me, that's what Mi'kmaq culture and heritage is. It's that back of a pocket watch that shows how the interconnectedness of everything makes it all work. It's like you've got cycles and patterns that come to our teachings through pattern recognition. Being in this one location, we've been on the planet Earth as it circled the sun over 13,000 times. You see a series of events that are played out during our annual journey as part of our yearly calendar, broken up into 13 little places where the Earth is as it travels around. That's our month of the year. When you talk about the months of the year, you're talking about what's going on in the environment outside during this moon cycle. That there's the names of the months that we have. Understanding that and understanding that progression talks to you about the resources and the material that's available out there. It talks about our semi-nomadic nature as people. We had to be at certain places at certain time to harvest the materials we needed to survive. We had 3 homes, winter home, summerstone, one near the coast. It's like we traveled back and forth. We didn't wander around aimlessly like the history books tell you that we were nomads. It's like, no, we had seasonal homes and we had to return back to those places year after year. So of course you're got conservation of the resources because you knew you were coming back. It's like you didn't totally take everything out. It's like we talked to Dr. Albert Marshall about Nedugalump, and he's like, you basically means what it comes right down to is taking just what you need and leaving the rest for others. And that to him is Nedugalump in a nutshell. And we know it's much bigger and greater connected to many different things. But through pattern recognition, you're seeing different cycles. A cycle is a reflection of a circle, and circles are sacred. It's like it's not just a Mi'kmaq thing. All Indigenous cultures, and even other cultures on the planet. I do a lot of talking to groups of people from everywhere, whether it be New Zealand or from Africa and India. And when I talk about Mi'kmaq culture, they see the connection. It's like, we got 13 months of the year too. And our months of the year are named after something that goes on in the environment in their culture. So they relate to us right away. And it's like that connection that we have to different places. Africans, like, talked to a series of school teachers that were coming here as a best practices group. And again, they're talking about what the natives are doing and the story that they're telling. And so when I'm there doing my little presentation, this gentleman from Africa stands up and he says, listening to you boys like listening to my grandfather. It's pretty cool. It's like, pretty powerful stuff. And different things that, they leave you and they gift you the pieces of their culture. The work of the Elders Advisory Council, they're the ones that tell us what is acceptable to present, what is too sacred to present. And we talk about places, but in a lot of cases, some of them are too sacred to share, and they don't want those shared. Another thing is resources that are very, very limited. It's like, we don't want to tell people about those things because they'll be either over-harvested or taken out, and our people lived everywhere, in every corner of the province. You've even got different towns in the province of Nova Scotia that still have their Mi'kmaq traditional names. And there's connections to where our people used to be and where they traveled and where they harvested things. When you partnership with even like a town, saying, what can I tell people about our town, about the name of our town, and what it used to be as part of history to bring people into my area? Like, they're interested in developing tourism markets in their area too. It's like, how do I get these people in? And when you get out there in the Bay of Fundy, when everybody's out there on April 1st, you're not seeing any of the Mi'kmaq people out there yet. They don't arrive till the middle of the month or maybe 3 weeks into the month. So April 14th, April 23rd, that's when you start to see the Mi'kmaq going along shoulder to shoulder with everybody else. And the reason being is when you look at the bubbles that are out in the bay, the bubbles at the beginning of the month are white. And it's nothing more than just the waves lapping in on there, creating these little pockets of air. It's like, that's not an indication that the fish are there. The indication of the fish being in there is when the bubbles are pink. Because what happens when the fish arrive, and like I said, you're getting the spring run, you're getting everything from shad, Gaspereau, bass, smelts, it's like trout. Everybody's coming in. They're excreting the oil in order to keep warm. Oil and water don't mix, so therefore the water gets slimy and it gets kind of gluey, and it picks up the sand in the Bay of Fundy, and it takes those white bubbles and it turns them into pink bubbles. So when you see the pink bubbles out there on the foam, then you know that there's oily fish in there. Another indicator is at that same time, because the oil and the water sticks together like a glue, it creates sort of a slimy thing, and that slime has a texture to it, kind of a gumminess, and it has an odor to it. It attracts flies and bugs. The thing is, you can't see the flies and bugs out on the bubbles, but you can see the birds coming in to pick off the bugs. And when you see the birds diving down and picking off the bugs, and that these bubbles are now pink, then you know the fish are in there. And then it goes from people that catch, you get dozens of people out there and there's only like 3 to 5 fish being caught all day, then after that point, you're getting people catching 3 to 5 each. It's like, yeah, the inventory is now there. So these are just some of the things that we do on the annual basis. And even with getting back to Moon and the 7 bird hunters, after those 4 hunters lose the path, the ones that are in the lead is like the robin, the chickadee. The robin is the hunter. He's got the bow, he's got the arrow. He shoots the bear. The bear's blood stains the robin red. That's the robin redbreast is the blood of the bear. And the robin shakes and ruffles his feathers to get rid of the blood on his feathers, and it turns the leaves red in the trees. The turning of the leaves red in September is the indication for the hunting season to begin. That's when that nutritional cycle is kicking in and the value of the meat is greater. So everything is tied in with the events of the sky and the environment around us. And to be sort of knowledgeable of that and to connect it to what's going to happen next, because it is all patterns and cycles, you know where it's going to go from there, that transition. And yeah, it's an important story to tell. And this is some things that I've done from Acadia First Nation, Bear River First Nation, all up to the nations that we have up in Unama'ki and Cape Breton. They all say that you don't go into the water swimming till the waters are shocked after the month of July. Now, lightning strikes the earth here in Nova Scotia more times in the month of July than any other time of the year. In fact, almost twice as much in July at any time. Now, the Mi'kmaq knew that there was this process of purification that happened during that event. And that's that edumumptum, that two-eyed seeing. It's like, this is our interpretation of the story. It's like, after the lightning strikes in the month of July, the waters are purified again. So then it's safe to go into the water for recreational use. But before that, it's still full of all these contaminants from the bug eggs and the frog eggs and the fish eggs, all the stuff that's left to hatch. It turns into bacteria and there's germs in the water, just toxins that can make you sick, make you ill. My grandmother used to say, like, don't go playing in that water this time of year, you get infantago or you'll get like diarrhea or something. It's like, it was true. It's like, you didn't go against the teachings of your grandparents. Now, modern science, taking it to that sort of molecular level, when you're talking about, the Mi'kmaq knew that this event happened. Scientific world is telling us why it happened, and that there's the process of ozonation. And what happens in the month of July when lightning is striking, it's creating ozone. And ozone has molecules that are united in groups of 3. So when lightning strikes and it strikes water, water is put together by molecules of 2, H2O, that's a 2. And when it strikes, it blasts them out singly. And in the presence of ozone, it gathers into units of 3. Thinking that it's ozone, it gathers back up into 3. Now, water that's been struck by lightning will hold a charge for about 20 to 30 minutes before it realizes, hey, we're not lightning, we're water. And it boots out or expels one of those molecules to be back to 2. And one of those single molecules will either find another single molecule, or what it'll do is grab onto a contaminant. And on a scientific level, a singular molecule is unstable, and it's called an atomic molecule. By itself, it can't survive, so there's a little mini micro explosion, this little poof, and it'll take out the germ, the bacterium, or the contaminant that it's attached to, leaving you with pure, clean water. That's the scientific explanation for what happens in the month of July after the lightning is struck. Now, I can even talk about that myself, because between my house and the ball field was a frog pond. And there were times of the year that you ran by that place because it stank so bad. But after the lightning strikes in July, you'd go play ball for 2 hours, and on the way home, you'd bend down and take a drink from that very same pond. And it said it was cold, clear, and it was refreshing. But again, once the contaminants are blasted out of it,
Ego igande ha ego gwandu dana hey hey ego igande